Alright, so first step, you are going to start a new document. You are going to do current screen size, 1920 by 1080p. I'm going to do mine with a vector brush. It's up to you how you want to do yours. And I'm going to set my brush fairly small, honestly. And first thing I want to do is I'm going to set myself some guidelines. I want to put the ground where the ball is going to bounce off of. So I'm going to just right along here, hold for a second until it snaps, and as long as it's more or less straight, that's fine. And then I want to add a new layer above that, and I want to make it a different color, something light that you can work on top of. I'll do a pink. And what you're going to do is you're going to start off up here, and you're going to fall down, and each time this ball bounces off the ground, it's going to bounce lower and lower. It just loses energy each time. And then for your very last one, you can just have it go off the page, basically. And then what I want you to do is make a new layer above that, and you are going to, I think this is just a little bit too close up to the top of the canvas up here, so actually I'm going to real quick just squish it down. There you go. Now on that new layer above that, and I'll choose a different color for the sake of keeping things clear, I'm going to draw a circle right here at the very front. The smaller your circle is, the more you're going to have to draw, so don't make it like gigantic like this. No. Too big. But also, if you try and make yours like this big, you're going to have a lot of stuff to do. So try and match this size, like approximately, I suppose. That works. You can move it around. You want to think of this circle here as like a bead on a string. And so we are using these guidelines to help us, but the place where the circle is sitting on the guideline, it shouldn't be like it's riding it like a roller coaster like this. It should be like it is sliding along on a string. Think of it like a busy board from your doctor's appointments as a child, or maybe now. I'm using this as like a size reference, and so I want to make sure that this stays consistent across my entire animation, so I'm actually going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to drag this over here to the top of this arc as well, and I'm going to layer, and I'm going to drag this over to the top of this last arc, and I'm going to get it one more time, and I'm going to drag it over here to the end, where it would like go off the screen. And so now I know that as I do my animation, as I go along here, it's not going to change size as I go. So I don't need these to be separate, so at this point I'm just going to merge them down so that I can turn them all on and off at the same time if I want to. I have less layers to deal with. And I'm going to turn down the opacity a bit. I already made them a light color, but might as well make them a little bit easier to work on top of. Alright, I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to set my color back to black. This is where we get to the animating part. So first thing first, I'm going to basically just trace directly over the circle, make use of that snapping tool, and right now, you may notice I have no way to add frames to this. I have not added my animation toolbar yet, so remember down here in the very bottom right, I'm going to click that, and look, now my little animation toolbar has shown up. We want each frame to be different this time, and so that means that instead of duplicating our frames like we did with our initials demo, you're just going to add a blank frame. And one thing that I want to point out is this feature called onion skin. And what this does is this makes it so that, and I'll go ahead and demo separately with a couple just extra little circles here. So what the onion skin does is it adds in these little like ghost images, these guys, showing you both past and future of whatever frame you're on. So right now I'm on frame 3. Frame 3 is in black, but it's showing frame 2, which is this one, frame 2, frame 3, and frame 4. And it's showing them not at full opacity so that they are sort of like ghost images. This helps you know where you just had a drawing and where your drawing will go next. We are not going to be worrying too much about the onion skins like in the future for this assignment, because we are going to be working straight ahead, which means we're just going to go in chronological order of our drawings. So I'm going to delete these because I don't need them. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start making my ball travel along this path. And so one thing to keep in mind is that when something is moving slower, the frames, the like objects during the frames are closer together. When something is moving faster, the objects have more space in between. So for my second frame, for your second frame, you can trace over the same ball if you want, because this one is really not going to change shape. And you can just use the move tool. Anytime you use the move tool while you're doing a motion layer, it's going to ask, do you want to transform just this singular frame, which is the default, or do you want to move everything? So for everything that we're doing here on this assignment, you just want to leave it on frame, which is the default, and then click transform. So all I'm doing here is I'm moving the ball over just a little bit along this path. Something about like that. You want to be mostly overlapping the first one, but you are starting to move off this edge. And now on frame 3, I'm going to turn this ball into an oval. And one thing to keep in mind, and I will link a video about this principle of animation. It's very helpful to watch. I would suggest you go watch it. It's called squash and stretch. And what that means is that whenever things move in space and they're not like a solid, rigid object like a metal ball, to make them look a little bit more alive, we want to squish them when they run into things and stretch them out when they are moving fast. That said, anytime that our ball is gaining speed, like it's falling down the hill or it's just recovering from that jump, falling down the hill, just recovering from that jump, that is when we are going to stretch, because that is going to make it look like it's going fast. The only time we will squash with this really is when it hits the ground. When it hits the ground, it's going to become like a little pancake. So, that said, when we come up here, back to our frame 3, we're going to turn this into just like the only barely an oval. Think like a watermelon shape almost. And remember, you want to make it look like it is riding along this guideline as like a thread, a bead on a thread, or a bead on a wire. And for each one, as it's speeding up here, you want to space out each frame, each ball, more and more. At this point, right as this ball is about to hit the ground, is the fastest point in this ball's journey. So this needs to be the skinniest frame, and we want it to just touch the ground. And I think that I need to move this one up just a tiny little bit, like that. And now this one is going to hit the ground, and when it hits the ground, it's going to squish or squash. And so the way that I prefer to draw these is to really make them look almost like mushroom caps. So, like this. I think that makes them look the most squishy. The way that you draw how it squishes or squashes is going to influence like what material it looks like it's made out of. But when you move along from here, your next one, and this is just like pro tip, when your ball touches the ground and when it squashes, they should both be making contact with the ground. Your next one should not be making contact with the ground. So your frame, as it is recovering from that first jump, should be another oval because it is still going fairly fast. Not quite as fast as this frame right here, but it should have some space right here. And then you will add a new frame in between, make this more of a watermelon type oval and not like a football oval. And then we're going to do something called easing in and easing out. And that just means that when something slows down, we want to really, really slow down with it. It's like adding in some cushion. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this little blue guideline that we put here, and I'm going to trace over it so that I have the size that I need, and I'm going to just move it over a little bit. Because I'm not quite there yet. I need to ease back into it just like I was up here. where I had the ball at the height of its arc, and then I had one extra, like just same circle, but just moved over a little bit before I really started messing with it. Same thing over here where I want to have one circle before the arc, the perfect circle in the arc, and then another circle right after the arc before I start turning it into ovals. And so for the sake of making sure that these are the same size, I will just trace over that and then move it over. And these ones should have the most overlap because this is when you'll be moving like the slowest throughout your arc, or the ball will be moving the slowest throughout its journey. So these ones should have a lot of overlap in them. And then you repeat the same exact steps that you had up here on this part of the fall, down here, but probably with like one less frame. And because it is not going nearly as fast as this one was, it's not going to get so distorted and it's not going to squash so much. And so it's going to be a just toned down version of this first descent. And when you get to this very last one, you really don't even need to distort it very much. I think what I have in my practice example that I made is that I really just use this same shape all the way down. I don't bother trying to like stretch it out into, watermelon or football. Maybe like a tiny little bit, but not very much. Like you can see the difference between this and like this blue, um, but not a whole lot. And all I do for the like squash when it hits the ground is I really just basically the same thing I just did there. I do the regular circle shape because this one is like it's really not coming in with a lot of force, a lot of speed, and so I just squish it down a little bit like that, and that's enough. And then to make this look like it's rolling off the page, or at least rolling up to a stop somewhere. So like we still want this to look like it has squished a little bit as it hit the floor. So it's got that one right there from the keyframe before. And then this is it at its full height again. Um, and it just needs to go this way in some amounts. So if that means going all the way off the page for you, depending on how close you are to the edge of your page, or just rolling to a stop over the course of 2 or 3 frames, that's fine. I want to say 24 is a good amount of frames to have for this. So mine will probably not go all the way off. And at this point, you can just duplicate the frame and move it over. I do suggest, if you're going to do this, where you duplicate the frame instead of drawing each time, definitely rotate it a little bit. I know that you're like, it's a circle, it doesn't matter. It's not a perfect circle, is the thing. And so if you don't rotate it a little bit, it will look like it's just sliding instead of like rolling. All right, so that's 24 frames. So this should be exactly 2 seconds long because we're working 12 frames a second. I'm going to turn off these guides here. I'll leave the floor on, obviously, and let's take a look. All right, so hopefully at this point you have something similar to this, or at the very least, you got like this beginning section here. That would be great if you got just like this. If you have frames 1 through like 6, appreciate it. Good job. Um, we can always come back to these and add in more frames to make them appear a little bit smoother. But this is a wonderful start. Good luck.